Hello and welcome to the Rally Point with Dominic Fielder, author of the King's German series, and myself, Rob McLaren, author of the Jobert series. Hello, Dominic Fielder.
Hello, Rob McLaren. How are you?
I'm well. I'm well. Each month at the Rally Point, we catch up with friends who enjoy the Napoleonic period. We record the first 30 minutes of the gathering, but once the recording is over, we remain online and the conversation continues. This month, we'd like to welcome Dr. Martin Boycott Brown to the Rally Point. Martin is the author of the amazing Road to Rivoli, Napoleon's first Italian campaign, a Napoleonic specialist, and Martin is based in Cambridgeshire. Welcome, Martin. Over to you, Dominic.
Good evening, Martin. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you very much. Hope everything's
last time you gave us a fantastic year. Last time you gave us a really wonderful talk on Rivoli, and we were talking about sort of Napoleon's early career. I'm really looking forward to what you've got to say this evening. My extensive research on Castiglione, I found out that it's the scene that's in Time Bandits. So that's my contribution. Over to you to enlighten us further.
Right. Well, first things first, thank you to everybody for first to Rob and to Dom for the invitation. Thank you to the rest of you for turning up. I hope you'll find something of interest in this. And away we go. The first thing I thought I'd talk about is pronouncing the name of this battle. I lived in Italy for 10 years, and I lived actually not that far away from this battlefield. So I kind of find it troubling that a lot of people don't seem to know how to pronounce it. If you're an English speaker, probably the best thing to do is just to ignore the G and pretend the G isn't there. It's Castiglione. If you want the full name of the place in modern Italian, it's Castiglione delle Stiviere. The GLI group of letters in Italian has a particular pronunciation. It's pronounced Li, which is difficult if you're not an Italian speaker. It appears in words like foglio, which means a sheet of paper. If you're a Latin speaker, you will know the word folio, probably. So that gives you an idea of where the word comes from. Castiglione seems to derive from the medieval Latin castello, genitive castellionis, meaning a fortification or small castle. So there we are, that's the cultural bit over with. Just a little piece of information for those who may be interested. There is a program you can get for your phone, which is called Forvo, and it gives you pronunciations. I find it very, very useful for things that I don't know how to pronounce. I like to bone up on these things, so that will give you a pronunciation of Castiglione. And on to other things, an overview. I'll just tell you the aim of this talk in a moment. A couple of words about sources, a little bit about the strategic overview, and then I'll talk about the terrain. The aim of the talk is very simple, really. I want to talk about the terrain. I'm not going to say that much about the conduct of the battle. I know this is going to be extremely disappointing for the war gamers and all of those who love to know exactly which regiments were where and what they did. But my reasoning is that you can get that information in all kinds of sources, including the book I wrote. It's not so easy to get decent information about the terrain of the battlefield. So my intention is to concentrate on the terrain, try and give you an idea of what the terrain is actually like. Sources, the most detailed book that I know of on the Battle of Castiglione is this one by Bernhard Wojkowicz. Bernhard is Austrian. He had access to the archives in Vienna, much better access than any of us could get because of living not far from Vienna. The book was published a long time ago. I think it was published the same year as I published my book, so it might be a bit difficult to find. But if you're interested in the battle and if you want all of the details, if you want really detailed maps, orders of battle, that's the book to go for, I would say. Much deeper treatment than I gave the battle in my book, because obviously I was dealing with the whole campaign, not a single battle. Sources that I used in my research, apart from Napoleon's correspondence, Massena's memoirs, Marmon's, etc., etc. Johann Baptist Schells was very important. He wrote more than one article, I believe, on Castiglione and Mantua. I can't remember now. It's a long time since I read them. Laugier was an officer in a captain in the French army. He wrote about the campaign. Roguet, Vigouroux, also serve as. If anybody does want a full list of sources, I mean, it's in the book, but if you don't have access to the book, I could give you a list of sources through Rob or somebody else. So by all means, ask if you're interested. Strategic overview. I suspect you all know that the French had been besieging the city of Mantua since the 18th of July. That's when they began actually shelling the city. They needed to capture Mantua before they could proceed with the next part of the campaign, which was originally intended to be an advance to the north over the Brenner Pass and into Austria. That changed, of course, later on. The Austrians obviously wanted to relieve the city of Mantua, and so on the 29th, 30th July, they began an advance from the north down both sides of Lake Garda. Wormser was going to go down the Adige Valley direct towards Mantua, passing by Rivoli, and after he'd relieved Mantua, as he hoped, he would turn towards the French army and fight it in the field. Second prong was to go down the Chiese Valley on the other side of Lake Garda, obviously to try and cut off the French from their supply lines, their communications with Brescia, with Milan, and ultimately with France. Another advance went down the Valsugana to Bassano and to Vicenza. So that was the general plan, fairly typical of the Austrians at this point to have a multi-pronged attack. They didn't seem to like concentrating their forces and having a single-pronged attack. They like to divide their forces and do things this way. The French knew that the attack was coming. On the 1st of August, they abandoned the siege of Mantua. Napoleon was concerned about being cut off. from Milan, so they abandoned the siege and began marching. And one of the characteristics of this whole phase of the campaign is a lot of marching. The French troops marched uphill, down dale, backwards and forwards in August in incredible heat. More than one of them mentions the terrible heat and how they suffered from heat and dehydration during these long marches. And a number of units went backwards and forwards because plans were changed, so they would march in one direction. They got there, then they had to turn around and march in the opposite direction. So very important to consider the weather conditions, which were very, very testing for all of the troops. On to the whole question of terrain. This is a map of the area south of Lake Garda, and I hope you can see from this map that the terrain south of Lake Garda is very, very hilly indeed. These are morainic hills, and if you've ever seen morainic hills, you recognize them immediately as soon as you see them, because they're these kind of hummocky, lumpy, hillocky type hills, steep-sided very often. They look as if they've been bulldozed because, of course, they have. This is material that's been deposited after a glacier has stopped and retreated. So this landscape here is very has a very particular character to it. In fact, it's so characterful that if you go online and look for morainic hills, you will find that there are a number of websites that advertise nice sightseeing trips around the morainic hills of this area. You can go by bicycle if you like. Anyway, what's striking to me about, or one of the things that's striking to me about this particular battle is that half of it seems to take place on the morainic hills, and half of it takes place on the plains. If you look at where Castiglione is placed on this map, and you look at a little bit further to the southeast, you can see a representation there of the Austrian and French lines for the battle, and you'll see that they stretch part way onto the hills and part way onto the plain. Why this was, I'm not quite sure. It's a little question mark that I have in my mind. But yeah, we'll return to that. Something to say about the hills, the morainic hills, is that there are lots of sort of little valleys which are quite separate from each other. And one of the odd things about this campaign is that there are actually incidents in which columns of French troops and columns of Austrian troops actually marched past each other going in opposite directions during the night without noticing each other. So this is a kind of area in which you can get lost or march without being noticed. This piece of text here is, I thought it was interesting to include this. This is written by Captain Logier, who was an officer who wrote a whole diary of or memoir of his service during this particular campaign. And here he describes the area, and some of his comments are quite interesting. He says he talks about these hills which are covered in vines, in olive groves. In the stony areas, there are almonds, abundant almonds. There are lemon trees, there are orange trees, there are espaliers of vines, and he says it's like being in Provence, basically. So this is a very rich area, a very productive area, in which the hills are well, they have vegetation on them. How much vegetation they had on them is a question which I don't think anybody can answer now. But at least where he is talking about, there must have been quite a lot growing on the hills. Whether the same was true of the area about Castiglione, I can't be sure. Very likely, however, that there were vines growing in that area. Something he also mentions in this passage is the production of fil blanc de Salon. This area, northern Italy generally, was productive of silk, and this area in particular was productive of silk. So that means there would have been mulberry trees around as well. There are photographs of this area in the middle of the 19th century, which show extensive cultivation of mulberry trees for silk. So that's just a sort of sidelight on what the area might have looked like. What do these hills actually look like? Well, this is a photograph of some of those hills. You can see this hillocky terrain, vines in front of me here when I took this photograph. It goes without saying that if you've got this kind of vegetation, then you're not going to be moving large numbers of troops in classic formations. If you're going to be fighting over this sort of terrain, this is going to be light infantry work. I think that is fairly obvious. The other thing to say about this photograph, you might think it's a terrible photograph, and I agree, but this shows you the kind of what the Italians call foschia, which is this extraordinary haze, heat haze, which you get in northern Italy. The climate of the Po Valley is absolutely atrocious, in my opinion. There are lots and lots of water courses. All of the waters that flow down from the mountains collect in the valleys, of course. It's a very, very humid climate. So in the summer, not only is it very hot, but it's also very humid. When you're in a place like Verona and it's 32 degrees centigrade and 98% humidity, believe me, you feel like you're in a Turkish bath. This is the other aspect of the terrain here. This is what it looks like where it's flat, and it is flat. Here we're looking towards the Morainic Hills. You can see them in the distance there. You might be able to see just left of centre, there is a tower poking up on the skyline. That's the tower of Solferino. I found this, I visited this battlefield, obviously walked over it, drove over it. I found it a frustrating kind of battlefield to research because it's very difficult when you're on the hills in among the vegetation. It's damn difficult to see anything. It's difficult to take photographs. Um, but if you go up that tower, you can see everything. So, piece of advice, if you ever go to Castiglione to visit the battlefield, go to the Tower of Solferino. It's the best place to see the battlefield from. You get an excellent panorama, provided it's not misty and hazy, um, and you get a clear idea of the terrain. Having said that, it's not a place where it's all that easy to say, oh yes, this is where the 11th Light Infantry stood. There aren't that many landmarks where you can, with certainty, pin down where a particular unit might have been. It's not like Rivoli. With Rivoli, you can be fairly sure of where most of the units were because of the landmarks, because of the nature of the terrain. Here, it's very, very speculative. You go there, you stand there, you look around, and you think, well, yeah, maybe this is where the 11th Light stood, but who knows? It might have been somewhere different. Maybe if you went with a metal detector and you were able to find bullets, buttons, bits of equipment, then you might be able to say with more certainty. But if you just walk over the terrain, much harder to say. Moving on rapidly, why do I make this comment about the flat terrain and the interest of the flat terrain? This is a quotation here from the memoirs of Vigo-Roussillon, who was a non-commissioned officer at this period. He later became a colonel. And he talks about and he was sick when the Battle of Castiglione took place, so he wasn't there. When he went back to his unit, as he says, he found that they were very proud of having maneuvered at the Battle of Castiglione. This is interesting because this shows that the French had adapted their tactics. They had changed the way they fought. And he comments that up till that point, they hadn't had any training in classic tactics, linear tactics. He said they just knew how to form up in two or three ranks, then run at the enemy and give them a good good thumping. But he makes this point that, and it has to be said that in the previous part of the campaign, the campaign in Liguria, in the mountains, the foothills there, and in around Lodi, for example, they hadn't needed to have the classic training because they were fighting almost like light infantry. This was a different style of warfare. They were able to use what has sometimes been called horde tactics, basically sort of rushing at the enemy. They didn't need the sophistication, partly because they weren't having to face cavalry all that much. So they didn't need to use things like squares and so on and so forth. But he makes the point that now in Lombardy, in the plains, not only was it advantageous for them to know about and be able to use classic formations, it was essential for them. And he makes the point that it was Roguet who trained them. Rogue, in his memoirs, talks about this. He said that he didn't know the drill book either. He didn't know the exercise manual. And when he was given the job of training the troops, he pretended to be sick for 3 days, went into his tent and read the manuals, and came out after 3 days and started instructing. So there's confidence for you. So Castiglione is interesting because it marks a turning point in the way the French, or this particular French army, fights in battle. Okay, getting on to the battle itself. Here is a map which is from Bernhard Wojkowic's book, the one I mentioned before. This is 3rd of August. I'm not going to deal with the Battle of Lonato in any detail at all. This is just to, if you like, set the scene for what happens a bit later. Here you can see the Castiglione delle Stiviere. You can see the Austrian troops lined up along this ridge, and the French, who are actually below them on the flat ground. This blue line that I've put in there indicates the top of that ridge. I know it's very difficult for you to see the contours on this reproduction, so that's just to give you an idea of where the top of the ridge lies. Obviously, that straight road, which you can see coming from Castiglione delle Stiviere, probably a Roman road going southeast, that is on the flat plain. Moving rapidly on, because I don't want to take too much time. This is a later stage, still on the 3rd of August. In other words, a couple of days before the Battle of Castiglione itself. You can see that the Austrians have shifted, they have moved back, and they've now taken up this position partly on the high ground, on the ridge, but you can see that their line extends across the flat ground, across the plain, right down to this point here, Monte Medolano. Monte Medolano is a hill. I mean, it's a very small hill, but it's the only hill in that area. It really is the only pimple, you could say, in the middle of that landscape. And that's where the Austrians constructed at least one redoubt, possibly two. And you can see the French taking up their positions facing the Austrians. Just to delineate for you once again the high ground there, in case you're not sure of where it is. Moving on rapidly, once again, it'll be almost impossible for you to work out where things are on this map, but I'll show you a detail in a moment. But this line shows you the Austrian positions. At the top, they are actually straddling the ridge, and right at the top there, where Schubert is positioned, he's actually on lower ground. It's pretty much a valley, although a shallow one. And right in the south, where the angle is in the Austrian lines, that's where Monte Medolano is. The French are kind of scattered. You have right at the top, you've got a line of them there. uh, on once again on lower ground, then not right on the high ground. You have this advanced group here, um, once again on lower terrain. Another group there, absolutely on the plain, and right down in the south here, this is a small group of cavalry and most importantly a battery of artillery under the command of Marmont, Auguste Marmont. And basically that's where the battle starts. Joubert writes in his memoirs that around 9 o'clock in the morning, he heard gunfire and cannon fire from the right of the line, and Napoleon came up to him and said, Serrurier is arriving. Serrurier was marching towards the battlefield. He had been investing Mantua. His troops were marching towards the battlefield, and Napoleon says to Joubert, basically, get on with it. You know, it's time to get started. When I read David Chandler's account of the Battle of Castiglione, incidentally, and I must say that I have full admiration for David Chandler. He was very, very kind to me when I was writing my book, very, very helpful. But when I read his description of this particular incident, I remember he said that Napoleon went up to Joubert. He said Napoleon was very angry. And I remember thinking to myself, how do you know that, David? So, the words that Napoleon uses, to my mind, didn't necessarily indicate that Napoleon was angry. Just an aside there. So, just a little detail. You can see this group of French troops. You can see 7th Hussars, 10th Chasseurs, 5th Dragoons, Grenadiers, Marmont's battery. The Austrians, their redoubt, an Ulan regiment, a Hussar regiment. What does this actually look like? This defensive position, this hill. Well, this is what it looks like. You can see on the left there, it's now a nice picnic area. You can see there it is. It's all of, I don't know, 15, 20 feet high, if that. That's where the Austrians had placed this defensive position. Looking in the other direction, you can see how flat it is. It's absolutely as flat as a pancake. I mean, I don't think you can get flatter than that. Where those seats are, incidentally, you can see there are a couple of panels there which have information about the Battle of Castiglione. This is Google Earth. I thought it would be interesting to have a look at Google Earth and see what the battlefield looks like from a high viewpoint. And I don't think you need to be a farmer to look at that terrain and think that's flat, because you've got very large square fields. This is very, very flat terrain indeed. And it's flat. If I show you, this is Monte Medolano. That's the hill. It's a nice cloud, unfortunately, masking the view, but that's where you can see the trees which delineate the hill. Right in the middle of nowhere. Absolutely nothing around it. Yeah, it fascinates me that I, I don't quite know why the Austrians took up this particular position. I mean, I know why, I can understand why they put a redoubt on that because it's the only sort of defensive position for miles around. So you would, but I'm not quite sure why they bothered to extend their line all the way down there. That's a debate for later on, perhaps. This is what the terrain looks like if you're on the flat ground, looking towards the morainic hills. And as you see, once again, absolutely flat. Uh, Cavalry country, I would say. Cavalry country, country for forming in square, good discipline. Yeah, you can kind of see why the French would have to change their tactics, why they would have to do things a different way. This is a map of, or detail of the map of the high ground. I'm showing you this just to draw your attention to that point. That is the tower at Solferino, the Rocca di Solferino, which is going to become a reference point in a moment. And you can see the Austrian positions there, another redoubt, and moving on. So here we are. Once again, this is Google Earth. This is an overview. You can see on the extreme left, Castiglione delle Stiviere. You can see that long straight road running southeast from it. You can see, I hope, that batch of clouds where Monte Medolano is. I hope you can see the Rocca di Solferino. And that line shows the ridge line, the high ground there. And that arrow shows you the approximate position of the Austrian line from Monte Medolano to the Rocca di Solferino. That line, as the crow flies, is about 4,000 meters, just to give you an idea of scale. So it's, in my view, quite a distance. This is a bigger battlefield than the ones that the French and the Austrians had been fighting on up till this point. Much more open. And when I was last at the battlefield and on the tower at Solferino, one of the people I was with commented on just how far the troops moved during this battle. They moved a considerable distance. Moving on, this is the second phase of the battle. I should perhaps have, just to emphasize that the French not only attacked the redoubts in the south at Monte Medolano, but they also attacked further north. They attacked the Austrian line in the center and also moved forwards on the far side of the high ground to try and drive in the Austrian right. This is where it gets messy. This is the, if you like, the second stage of the battle. This is in the afternoon. You can see that everything has split up. The French are all over the place. The Austrians are all over the place. The Austrians are basically legging it at this point. Their line has been broken. They are having to retreat. So where are they after? Incidentally, you can see Solferino right on the left-hand side of that map there. Well, this is the terrain, Google Earth once again, that they're retreating over. You can see Solferino on the left, and the terrain is hilly, but not excessively hilly. It's kind of rolling, undulating hills, but it's sufficiently broken for there to be lots of different roads through this. Basically, there is not one single obvious road that. Well, there is one road that was more obvious than the others, but one of the reasons why the units have split up is because they are taking different roads to retire. Of course, they are moving towards the right of the map, towards the east, and where are they going? Well, they are going to Borghetto, which I don't know if you can see that, if that's hidden off the edge of the right of the screen there. But we'll come to that in a second. This is Borghetto. This is where the Austrians are retreating. They're trying to put the Mincio between them and the French. And you can see this very steep escarpment here. That is also their objective is to climb up this escarpment so that they are in a defensive position on the high ground there. From where, if necessary, they can move to the north. They can retreat towards the Adige Valley, towards Rivoli. Borghetto has had a small bridge across it. What does Borghetto look like? Well, this is Borghetto. We thank Fritz Haverkamp, who took this photograph and posted it online very kindly. He didn't know he was providing it to us, but I extend my thanks to him, whoever he is. Borghetto is a lovely little place with a couple of restaurants which are very, very nice. You can sit out and eat, as I have done. Well worth it. The bridge that the Austrians were trying to get over is that one you can see there, that wooden bridge with all the tourists standing on it. That was the bridge they were going to get their army across if they could. We're looking south, incidentally, so that the escarpment that I was talking about is you can see it there on the left of the picture. The closing of the battle was, and incidentally, I should say that the distance between Solferino and Borghetto is about 13 kilometers. So a long retreat and march for soldiers who were already exhausted and marching in summer heat. So this has been a bit long. I apologize for the length of this. A little question for war gamers, just for a bit of fun. If you played as the Austrians, would you deploy only on the hills, on the high ground, or would you imitate the Austrian line over the plain to Monte Medonano? I leave you with that to consider. And that's it. Thank you for your attention, those of you who are still awake.
Martin, thank you very much for that very, very detailed analysis of the terrain. I mean, I'm at a loss to understand the Austrian deployment, but I think the thing that really got to me was that scene at how you described the end, trying to get a retreating army over a single bridge. I mean, that I can only imagine the catastrophe that's occurring at that point. And so the river you said about was it the Mincha or
It's the Mincha, yeah.
um, that looked a far stronger position to start with. Um, you know, and also what I again found fascinating looking at sort of 1796 to 1794, and I think Hans Karl's talked about this before about the fact that we've got almost like a series of very different French armies depending on the area. Is that this army seems to have been indoctrinated in light infantry tactics, as you said, you know, almost like the tactics of the horde, which seems very different from the army of the North, for example.
Yeah, yeah.
So it's that part of it to me is fascinating. How and Commander still not having read the you know, the regulations on drill. This is really an embryonic army, and that's why I think you get some fascinating battles in this period, which almost lack the element of command and control that wargamers absolutely love. I'm just thinking about that terrain. If you represented that terrain with all those sort of with those hills, and then said to people, actually, you can't see anything beyond the first 12 inches in a war game. So most players would go berserk, and they would tell you exactly how they can see all these things. But that deployment shows that really these generals are they just seem to be guessing, and in the Austrian instance, they're guessing quite poorly. Just from my limited view of that.
Thank you for that. Thank you. Yes, I sometimes wonder what they were doing, yeah. I mean, a source which I didn't mention, which is very interesting to read, is Thomas Graham's his memoir, his account, because there are occasions when he actually says, you know, I've got no idea what on earth they're trying to do, or else, you know, he says. They seem to be the Austrians seem to be trying to imitate the French, but you know they haven't quite understood what the French are doing, and he's absolutely right. It's almost like monkey see, monkey do. You know, the Austrian commanders seem to have got this idea, oh, you know, there's the French are doing these sort of turning movements. I wonder if we could try that. But they seem to have sort of understood the theory, but they haven't got the practice. So, you know, they can't pull it off. And the extraordinary thing about Napoleon, I think, is not only does he understand the theory, but he's able to do it in practice. And that's pretty remarkable, really.
Well, I think yet again you've fulfilled one of the basic criteria of Rally Point, which is that we should know less than when we started, and we know less now about Austrian tactics in this period than when we started. So I thank you very, very much for that.
Okay, thank you, everyone. Fascinating conversation so far. I'm about to end our recording, but please stay online as we continue the chat to wrap up this month's Rally Point. Thank you, Dr. Martin Boycott Brown, for joining us. Martin, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Martin.
For those of you who have joined us live this evening or this morning, thank you for your time with us. Next time, why not join us here at the Rally Point next month when we catch up with Mark Middleton and Jim Cormier, who participated in the immersive march from Quatre-Bras to Waterloo reenactment recently, and they'll let us know about that experience. Simply contact Dominic and I for your Zoom invite. Our details are at the end of the video, and share Rally Point with your friends so we can hear from them as well. Any previous Rally Point catch-ups or chats are on our YouTube channel, and if you've enjoyed them, please leave a quick review. So it's good morning from me, and it's good night from him.
Good night.